Welcome back to Hidden Faith. It's great to have you here. Today we're looking at a topic that gets talked about a lot but rarely explained in a clear, grounded way. Kabbalah is often shown as celebrity spirituality or vague mysticism, but its real history is deeper, older, and far more structured than most people realize. In this episode, we'll break everything down step by step without jargon, so you can understand what the tradition actually teaches and why it mattered so much. Kabbalah is a word many people recognize, yet few can explain. For some, it's a red string bracelet. For others, it's a cloud of mystical symbols. But historically, Kabbalah wasn't designed for casual use or public teaching. It was a guarded system studied only by people who reached a certain level of maturity, knowledge, and stability. That alone raises a major question. What kind of ideas require this level of protection? When you look past the surface, you find a structured attempt to describe how reality works, not through physics, but through patterns, relationships, and stages of creation. Early teachers believed these ideas could shape how a person thinks, acts, and understands themselves. If used well, they offered clarity. If used poorly, they could confuse or mislead. This belief shaped centuries of caution. The larger mystery is why Kabbalah has been misunderstood for so long. Part of the problem is that many teachings were written in layered language, stories, symbols, and metaphors that needed training to unpack. Another part is that different groups interpreted the material differently, some as philosophy, some as psychology, and some as descriptions of hidden forces in the universe. What makes the story even more interesting is how strongly people outside Judaism reacted to it. Renaissance thinkers believed Kabbalah held a universal code. Occultists believed it unlocked invisible worlds. Modern culture turned it into a brand. Yet very few engaged with the original ideas that shaped the tradition. So here's the central tension of this episode. Is Kabbalah a mystical secret, a symbolic roadmap, or an early attempt to understand human behavior and creation itself? And why were ordinary people discouraged from studying it? In the next sections, we'll go back to the beginning, trace how the tradition formed, and see how the system developed into a detailed map of the cosmos and the human mind. Once we understand the origin, the secrecy finally starts to make sense. To understand why Kabbalah became so influential and so restricted, we need to look at where it came from. The story doesn't start in medieval Europe, even though that's where the famous texts appear. It begins much earlier, inside the religious and intellectual world of Second Temple Judaism, where people tried to understand how an infinite God could interact with a finite world. Some of the earliest forms of Jewish mysticism focused on visions of the divine throne, known as Merkava mysticism. These accounts described intense structured journeys through spiritual palaces or levels of reality. The material wasn't meant for beginners. Teachers warned that anyone who approached these ideas too quickly could misinterpret them and cause harm to themselves or others. That caution became a defining theme in later Kabbalah. Centuries later, in the medieval period, Jewish communities in Spain and the wider Mediterranean experienced a burst of philosophical and mystical creativity. It was in this environment that a massive text called the Zohar emerged. Written in a style that looks ancient but was likely compiled in the 13th century, the Zohar blended narrative, commentary, and symbolic interpretation. It described creation, human purpose, and the structure of divine energy through stories rather than step-by-step lessons. Its influence was immediate and long-lasting. After the expulsions from Spain, many Jewish mystics moved to the town of Saft in northern Israel. There, in the 16th century, Isaac Luria developed a new way of explaining creation and human responsibility. His ideas about contraction, cosmic fracture, and repair reshaped Kabbalah into a more organized system. Students described his teachings as powerful but demanding. They required a stable mind, strong grounding in law and ethics, and the ability to handle symbolic thinking. This reinforced the tradition of teaching Kabbalah only to prepared individuals. Throughout these periods, Kabbalah wasn't isolated from its surroundings. Scholars interacted with Islamic philosophy, Christian thought, and local intellectual movements. Ideas moved across borders and changed along the way. But while the outside world was interested, traditional teachers stayed cautious. Their view was simple: deep concepts need deep preparation. By the time Kabbalah reached early modern Europe, it already carried hundreds of years of interpretation, commentary, and debate. Understanding this background is essential because the core teachings we'll explore next didn't appear out of nowhere. They were built slowly, layer by layer, by people trying to answer one central question: how does the infinite connect to the world we live in? To understand what Kabbalah actually teaches, we need to separate the public image from the internal structure. The real system is built on a set of ideas that try to explain how creation unfolds, how human behavior fits into that process, and how a person can improve their life through clarity and responsibility. None of this relies on magic or vague spirituality. It is a framework built from definitions, relationships, and disciplined interpretation. The first major idea is Ein Sof, meaning without end. It describes the infinite, not as a being with traits, but as something beyond categories. Kabbalah teaches that creation didn't begin with a physical event. Instead, it began with a shift in relationship between the infinite and the finite. This leads to the second idea, tzimtzum, often translated as contraction. According to the Lurianic version, the infinite created space for the world by withdrawing or limiting its presence. This isn't a physical action. It's a conceptual model explaining how a finite world can exist without dissolving into the infinite. From that space, creation unfolds in stages through what Kabbalists call emanation. This is where the tree of life enters the picture. The tree of life is not a map of heaven or a supernatural diagram. It is a way of organizing how qualities flow into the world. The 10 Sephirot, such as wisdom, understanding, kindness, and discipline, represent categories of influence. They are not spheres in a literal sense. They are patterns that show how an idea or action moves from potential into reality. A useful way to understand this is to think of the tree of life as a workflow. A thought begins in one stage, develops in another, gains structure, and then becomes action. Kabbalists believed the universe works in a similar pattern. This idea made the tree of life popular not because it was mystical, but because it was practical. It gave people a visual way to think about growth, conflict, decision-making, and emotional balance. Another important teaching is Shevirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels. In Luria's system, early stages of creation couldn't hold the intensity of divine energy, and they broke apart. This is not meant as a historical event. It is a metaphor for instability. Moments when a system fails because the structure can't support the pressure within it. From that break, fragments fall into the world, shaping both the complexity and the challenges of human life. Luria used this idea to explain why the world contains both order and disorder. What follows is tikkun, or repair. Many people know this word from modern social justice conversations, but its original meaning was more focused. Tikkun refers to actions that restore balance, thoughtful choices, ethical behavior, and emotional discipline. In the Kabbalistic view, every action contributes to restoring structure in a world shaped by fragmentation. This doesn't require belief in supernatural forces. It's a way to think about responsibility and long-term impact. You repair something by improving how you use your strengths and how you interact with other people. The next layer involves the Hebrew alphabet. Kabbalists believed letters were more than symbols. They represented fundamental building blocks of meaning. This led to tools like gematria, numerical interpretation, notarikon, acronym-based interpretation, and tamura, letter substitution. These tools were not meant to predict the future or unlock secret spells. They helped readers notice patterns, interpret text creatively, and think about language with structure and precision. In some ways, they acted like early forms of data analysis, methods for finding patterns in limited information. There were also practical techniques, but they were rarely taught publicly. They included focused breathing, repeated phrases, and letter visualizations. The goal wasn't ecstatic experience, it was concentration. Teachers worried that unprepared students might chase emotional highs instead of developing stability or insight. This caution is part of why Kabbalah was restricted. It wasn't about secrecy for its own sake. It was about guiding people toward grounded thinking, not confusion. When you look at all these components together, the infinite, the contraction, the tree of life, the break and repair, and the tools for interpretation, you see a system that tries to describe how complexity forms and how a person fits into that complexity. Kabbalah isn't a loose set of mystical ideas. It is a structured method for understanding change, behavior, and meaning. And because it required maturity and discipline to use well, teachers believed it needed careful handling. With this core in place, we can now explore the main debate. How should these ideas be understood? Literally, symbolically, psychologically, or as something in between? That's where the next section begins. Once you understand the core ideas of Kabbalah, the next question is how to interpret them. Different groups reached different conclusions, and these disagreements shaped how the tradition was taught, restricted, and used. The first major divide is between traditional religious interpretation and scholarly analysis. Traditional teachers view the system as a way to understand creation, ethics, and personal responsibility. Scholars, meanwhile, often see it as a symbolic language developed over centuries to explain psychological and theological questions that didn't fit standard categories. Another split appears between people who treat Kabbalah as literal metaphysics and those who treat it as symbolic psychology. In the literal view, concepts like the Sephirot or tzimtzum describe real processes that shape the world. In the symbolic view, these ideas represent how humans organize thought, emotion, and behavior. Many modern readers find value in the psychological angle because it avoids superstition while keeping the insights intact. A third debate concerns the purpose of secrecy. Some argue secrecy protected dangerous knowledge. Others believe it simply ensured that students had enough grounding to avoid confusion. A more practical explanation is that communities used restrictions to maintain stability and limit speculative ideas that could disrupt leadership, law, or daily life. In this view, secrecy wasn't about power. It was about caution. There is also tension between theosophical Kabbalah and practical Kabbalah. Theosophical Kabbalah focuses on ideas, structures, and meaning. Practical Kabbalah includes techniques like amulets or specific meditative formulas. Historically, most rabbis discouraged practical Kabbalah because they believed it encouraged shortcuts and could lead to emotional or spiritual instability. This is one reason traditional teachers preferred slow, careful study over dramatic experiences. Another important debate concerns Christian and Renaissance interpretations. Thinkers like Pico della Mirandola viewed Kabbalah as a universal code that confirmed Christian beliefs. Jewish scholars strongly disagreed, arguing that these interpretations ignored the tradition's ethical structure. This disagreement shaped how Kabbalah traveled through Europe and how it later influenced Western esotericism. Finally, we have the modern conflict between authentic study and pop culture Kabbalah. Celebrity-centered versions often simplify the material, removing context and turning a structured system into a set of quick promises. Traditional teachers worry this reduces Kabbalah to entertainment, while scholars argue it reflects a broader cultural trend of people searching for meaning without long-term study. All these competing explanations reveal something important. Kabbalah is not one thing. It is a layered system shaped by geography, culture, belief, and interpretation. To understand its impact, we need to look at what the system was trying to achieve and why people believed it held real insight into human behavior and creation. That brings us to the deeper question: what is the hidden science behind it? To understand why Kabbalah stayed influential for so long, we need to look beyond its symbols and ask a clearer question. What problem was the system trying to solve? When you strip away the metaphors, Kabbalah becomes a way to think about complexity, how the world forms, how people behave, and how small choices create long-term impact. In that sense, the hidden science of Kabbalah isn't supernatural power. It's a method for organizing thought. The first part of this method is pattern recognition. The tree of life looks like a diagram of mystical forces, but at its core, it's a map that teaches people to understand how ideas move from potential to action. Each step, From insight to planning to discipline to expression reflects stages we already experience in daily life. Kabbalists use these patterns to understand emotions, conflicts, and moral challenges. Instead of seeing behavior as random, they treated it as something structured. The second part is cognitive framing. The concept of tzimtzum, for example, is often described as divine contraction. But on a practical level, it teaches that creation begins with making space, holding back, pausing, or stepping away so something new can appear. This idea applies to leadership, relationships, creativity, and decision-making. It's a reminder that control isn't always about force. Sometimes it's about restraint. Many modern psychologists describe similar patterns, but Kabbalah articulated them centuries earlier using symbolic language. Another component of the hidden science is systems thinking. Kabbalists viewed the world as interconnected. When one area breaks down, other areas feel the effect. This is reflected in the story of Shevirat HaKelim, the shattering of the vessels. Rather than reading it as a cosmic accident, think of it as an early model for system failure. If a structure isn't strong enough to handle pressure, it collapses. And when that happens, the fragments don't disappear. They influence everything that follows. In modern terms, this mirrors ideas from engineering, ecology, psychology, and organizational theory. Then there is tikkun, or repair. In modern society, the word is often used broadly, but in Kabbalah, it has a clear meaning. Actions that bring a system back into balance. This applies to personal habits, emotional regulation, ethical behavior, and community life. Kabbalists believed the world became unstable because of earlier fractures, and people play a role in restoring stability. Whether or not you accept the metaphysics, the ethical message is straightforward. Your choices matter, and consistent behavior creates long-term repair. Cabala also developed a structured approach to information analysis through tools like gematria and tamura. While these techniques can seem esoteric, they function like early pattern analysis methods. They force the reader to slow down, examine connections, rethink assumptions, and uncover layers of meaning in text they thought they already understood. The point wasn't to find magic numbers. It was to train the mind to notice structure in chaos. Renaissance thinkers saw this intellectual discipline and believed Kabbalah contained a universal code, something that could connect mathematics, language, theology, and nature. They weren't entirely wrong. Kabbalah doesn't provide equations or physical models, but it does offer a way to think about relationships between things. How small changes ripple outward, how meaning is shaped, and how internal states influence external actions. That's why philosophers, magicians, and scientists all found something recognizable in it. The secrecy makes more sense when you understand this hidden science. Teachers didn't limit access because the ideas were dangerous in a supernatural way. They limited them because the ideas were powerful in a psychological way. If you misunderstand a story like tzimtzum or the Sephiroth, you can turn a practical insight into confusion or superstition. Without grounding, the symbolic language becomes a distraction instead of a tool. So the deeper insight is this: Kabbalah isn't a shortcut to power. It's a structured approach to understanding complexity, responsibility, and personal growth. Its symbols look mystical, but its function is practical. And that tension between symbol and structure is what has kept the system alive for centuries. In the next section, we'll explore what these ideas might mean for us today, and what the world would look like if more people understood the symbolic framework behind Kabbalah. If we step back from the historical debates and focus on the core ideas, a bigger question appears. What would change if more people understood Kabbalah as a framework for clarity rather than a mystical secret? The system teaches that meaning develops through structure, that restraint creates space for growth, and that small choices can repair long-term damage. These are practical lessons, not hidden powers. Imagine a world where symbolic literacy was taught alongside regular education. People would learn to recognize patterns in their thinking, manage emotional responses with more stability, and understand how their actions influence larger systems. Many conflicts, personal, social, or political, come from reacting without understanding the structure behind the reaction. Kabbalah's model suggests that clarity begins with recognizing the steps that lead from impulse to outcome. Another possibility is reconsidering the role of secrecy. What if the barriers around Kabbalah weren't meant to keep people out, but to make sure they were ready to use the ideas responsibly? In that case, the tradition becomes less about exclusion and more about preparation. These questions help us see Kabbalah not just as a historical curiosity, but as an early attempt to teach deeper insight into behavior, meaning, and responsibility. And that leads us toward the final reflection of this episode. When we return to the opening image, a ladder few were allowed to climb, the meaning becomes clearer. Kabbalah was never meant to be a secret for the sake of mystery. It was a structured system that required preparation, stability, and the ability to handle symbolic ideas without getting lost in them. The tradition used stories, diagrams, and patterns to explain how people shape their lives and how responsibility builds repair over time. What makes Kabbalah enduring is not hidden power, but organized insight. It gives people a way to think about creation, behavior, and complexity without turning everything into superstition. And even though different groups interpreted it in different ways, the core message remains consistent. Your choices matter, and clarity improves the world around you. So the final question is simple. When knowledge is kept behind closed doors, is it protecting truth or protecting people until they're ready to use it well? If you enjoyed this breakdown, go ahead and hit like and subscribe so you don't miss the next episode here on Hidden Faith. And if there's a hidden tradition, ancient system, or overlooked idea you want us to explore in a future video, leave your suggestion in the comments. I always read them.